You are listening to the CMQ Investing Podcast. This is Chris Franco. I'm actually live on Instagram right now just for the audience, and so it sounds a little bit more natural. But I've been mulling over this topic for a while, and it's about Elon Musk and what I believe to be one of his character traits that has been getting him into a lot of trouble. And now it seems like the trouble he's been getting into might be irreversible. Let me explain. So his plans to take over Twitter, I believe, were announced in April. Since then, we've talked about on our YouTube channel, CMQ Investing, his plans to pull out of it because basically he was concerned that there was more bots than he initially thought. And it's not even worth getting into those details. What matters here is the following. Twitter is going to sue the living lights, I was going to say the living bejesus out of him, but I don't know if that is a universally understood term. But yeah, Twitter is going to sue the heck out of him. In addition to the fact that if he pulls out of the deal, there's but there's some sort of like $1 billion penalty. And he's also going to pay a fortune in legal fees. Now, this is a good example, though, of a characteristic of Elon Musk. And I'll get into the kind of the formula here where you have certain things that work to a certain extent, but they can also backfire. And it comes down to some psychological principles. So let me get into this. First and foremost, Twitter last Tuesday officially sued Elon Musk to force him to follow through on the $44 billion takeover of Twitter that he agreed to in April after he said last week that he wanted to walk away from it. And it sets the stage for a high-profile legal battle that could drag on for months or longer. Prior lawsuits have led to depositions of Mr. Musk and saw him take the stand. So my question here was not, do I think Elon Musk is a good guy, or is he cool, or is he innovative, and is this a good idea for him to take over Twitter? But I was more thinking to myself, like, why does he keep getting himself into stuff like this? And let me explain. Going back to around 2018, Elon Musk has had a habit of just causing himself trouble that he doesn't need to cause himself. A good example would be when he declared that he was going to take Tesla private. That led to, I believe, a lawsuit from the SEC. He had to pay $20 million, and I believe he lost his seat on the Tesla board. Again, a big inconvenience, didn't look good. There was the appearance on Joe Rogan where he decided to partake in smoking a big fat doobie with Joe Rogan, which, again, I'm not judging, but it's when you're the CEO of a publicly traded company, it's not a good look. It made shareholders nervous. I know there was some talk at they were going to start drug testing him for things related to SpaceX. Then you have, going down the list here, when those kids I believe it was a soccer team in Thailand, they were stuck in that cave. You might remember there was Elon had said he was going to send help. And then there was a gentleman who was a cave diver who actually helped save the day. And Elon Musk, he insinuated that this person was, and I feel weird saying this word, but he insinuated he was a pedophile. He said, called him a pedo guy. And that led to a defamation lawsuit, which he ended up winning in court. But again, it caused him more trouble. And it makes me think back, I recently did an episode for the YouTube channel about, the importance of a good CEO, a good manager. And I did it about Tim Cook because I'm trying to identify the patterns that make great CEOs or great leaders. Management is something that's very important in investing, and it's something that I think I need to work on building my pattern recognition for. Just to kind of and I know I'm going to bounce around here like a pinball machine, but this will all kind of come together. When I think back to Elon Musk, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, as time goes on, the importance of management gets more important. But it's something where it's not as easy to identify those characteristics as it is for, what makes a good business good or a bad business bad. So I've been trying to build that muscle myself. And part of my process is creating content because that's how I can really remember it. So thinking to this episode I did on Tim Cook, I learned a lot about Tim Cook. And I said, I think I tweeted about this, from everything I learned, he's in that level, he's almost like a hero to me now. I really look up to him and admire what he did and what he continues to do. He has certain characteristics that, or Elon Musk has a characteristic that Tim Cook doesn't exude, and that's impulsivity. And that's what I want to get into first. So impulsivity is something that Elon Musk has himself said he is somewhat impulsive. And if you think about those decisions I just mentioned, those are all very impulsive moves. And I was wondering to myself, why is that? Is there anything I can link this to? And you might remember from the previous year or year and a half ago, Elon Musk hosted SNL, Saturday Night Live. And he gave the opening monologue, as all hosts do, to which he revealed that he has Asperger's. So I was doing a little research on Asperger's because that's what someone does when they want to know more. And I found out that one of the key characteristics, or symptoms rather, is impulsivity. And I'm not saying I can diagnose anyone. This is not like a medical opinion. But I thought that was interesting in terms of his own personality type. The second thing is Elon Musk has talked about just basically being extremely sleep deprived. And a common side effect of a lack of sleep or sleep deprivation is impulsivity. And as I mentioned, Elon Musk himself has called himself somewhat impulsive. And so this characteristic trait here by itself is not the end of the world, but what I'm seeing happening is twofold. And I'm going to bring this into Charlie Munger in a second, but Elon Musk has some overconfidence at play. And there's an old adage called, or it goes like this, to the man, never underestimate the man that overestimates himself. And Elon Musk is certainly a good example of that. And actually, when Charlie Munger was asked about Elon Musk at the 2019 Daily Journal meeting, here's what he said. He said, "I want the guy who understands his limitations instead of the guy who doesn't." But he said, on the other hand, I've learned something terribly important in life. These weird guys who overestimate themselves occasionally knock it out of the park. So think about Elon Musk and what he's achieved in the last year. He's the man of the year. Tesla went through the roof. I'm not saying there wasn't skill or talent involved in that, but there's always luck involved in success as well. And certainly Elon Musk has been a great example of when you take huge swings and really double and triple down on yourself and are willing to do the work. You can get these kind of extreme outcomes. Charlie Munger continued, though. He says, "I don't want my personal life to be around a bunch of guys who are living in a state of delusion, who happen occasionally to win big. I want the prudent person." And he's referring to, who would be the manager of a leader of a company. Again, this was about Elon Musk. And I think when I look at what's going on with him in this Twitter deal, it's very similar. Like Elon Musk, by taking over Twitter, there was, as much as I'm a fan of the idea, because I think Twitter needs help, it's actually not a situation I'd want to find myself in. Twitter has failed to turn a profit 8 out of the last 10 years. It's very much a company that has a lousy past and maybe a bright future, which both Warren and Charlie have said, they try to avoid companies like that. Typically to solve one problem requires there's going to be more problems to solve after that. And, I think this overconfidence, this sense of self. And again, I understand it. If I'm Elon Musk and I'm now the wealthiest person on paper anyway, I'm being named Time Man of the Year, and I didn't lack confidence before that. That's the kind of thing that can get you into, taking on more than you need. And I think he's always kind of done that and it's worked out. But this Twitter situation is just a good example of a mistake that would have been very avoidable. I think by anyone who is following these Munger Buffett tenets. And I want to take this to another step. I did some more research here because I've become like an encyclopedia for Charlie Munger. But in a 2009 interview with the Stanford Lawyer magazine, the interviewer asked to Charlie, he said, "You've often said that one of the keys to your success has simply been to avoid making the garden variety mistakes that you see other people make." And Charlie responded and said, "Warren and I have skills that could easily be taught to other people. One skill is knowing the edge of your own competency. It's not a competency if you don't know the edge of it. And Warren and I are better at tuning out the standard stupidities. We've left a lot more talented and diligent people in the dust just by working hard at eliminating standard error." There's one more part of this, but I want to just take this to, again, I'm like the encyclopedia now. I'm almost like laughing at myself as I hear myself talk. Going back to the 1989 Berkshire letter to shareholders, Warren Buffett talked about, the biggest mistakes he made in the first 25 years of running Berkshire Hathaway. And one of the first was buying these cigar butt companies, because very rarely, do you find something that doesn't require a lot of fixing, and there's just a lot of headaches. And so that was a mistake they learned from. So they, that's an example of a standard error that they worked very hard at eliminating by then buying quality businesses and not falling for some of the traps that many overconfident, successful people can fall into. But the interview continues. The last question here was, if you had to characterize a few mistakes that you see executives making, which ones jump out at you? Now, as I read this answer, think about what we've just discussed with Elon Musk. Charlie says, "An extreme optimism based on an inflated self-appraisal is one. I think that many CEOs get carried away into folly. They haven't studied the past models of disaster enough, and they're not risk averse enough. One of the very interesting things about Berkshire Hathaway is how chicken it is, how cautious, how low is its leverage. But Warren and I would not have been comfortable with more risk entrusted with other people's net worths. There was no reason for our financial institutions to stretch as much as they did with the leverage, the shady people, and the compromises. I was then reminded of something that I read in Peter Kaufman's amazing book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. It's from one of Charlie's lectures from, I wish I should have the date, but I don't have it in front of me. But he was talking about the following. He says, while an excess of self-regard is often counterproductive in its effects on cognition, it can cause some weird successes from overconfidence that happen to cause success. The factor accounts for the adage, never underestimate the man who overestimates himself. But the problem with this is, you're going to end up having eventually, it's not everything's going to line up perfectly. And I think with this Elon Musk Twitter situation, I would argue that this is an example of that. Because no matter how it turns out, he's either going to buy a company he didn't want to buy, he's going to overpay for it, or he's going to end up having to pay $1 billion plus all the legal fees, plus the distraction that this will cause to really what's most important, to the shareholders that are invested in this company. So, overconfidence can be useful, but overconfidence mixed with impulsivity, mixed with billions of dollars can be a recipe for disaster. And I'm not suggesting that this is Elon Musk is done because of this, but it's a good example of a mistake that would have been very easily avoidable. And even if it goes through, Elon Musk is now going to be responsible for a company that's failed to turn a profit for 8 out of the last 10 years. It's a turnaround job. It's a company that has the probability of fixing it is not that great, just based on, how many things have to go right. So I love Twitter. I use Twitter. Follow me, Chris Franco, on there. But Twitter has not created a lot of value for shareholders. And I think that for Elon Musk, who already has so much on his plate, you could argue that it's a real mistake to even have stepped foot into this venture or to this potential acquisition in the first place. And I would argue that based on everything we know about Elon in the last 5 years, and even in his own words, impulsivity is likely a cause. Now, I don't know if that's related to the medical thing that I mentioned before. I'm certainly not claiming, like I said, to make any sort of medical assessment, but I'm just using his own words and trying to, infer from there. So anyway, how can we relate to this? How can we use this? I think the key is, and something I keep trying to do is study the errors, study the big mistakes that people make and understand what causes them, and keep a checklist going and make sure that you just don't go there. Charlie Munger has said there's some things in life you just want to, keep a wide berth. You just want to stay away from it. And I think if you're, I run my own business, but if I was, suddenly really feeling myself and deciding to go on and buy, I'm going to go buy another company now and just get myself into a whole lot more stuff, thinking that I can turn it around or whatever else. That's overconfidence. That's when you have success and you start thinking that, you just can't lose. You mix that with impulsivity, not to mention billions of dollars. And Elon Musk is probably going to have to take some sort of financial bath for this. And it's going to take his attention away from what really matters. And I think great managers, great CEOs of companies you want to invest in, they're not making those mistakes. And I'm certainly not, who am I to say anything bad about Elon Musk? He's obviously done some great things and created a lot of value for shareholders, but it's all about the long term. And I think there's obviously an issue here that needs to be corrected. So I want to share that with you guys. I hope that was helpful. If you enjoyed this episode, a very rational thing you can do next is make sure that you are following on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That way you get all the latest episodes in your feed as soon as they're released, and you'll be the first to have the information. And not only will you have the information, but you'll be able to use it before anyone who doesn't subscribe. So appreciate you for listening. Thanks so much. My name is Chris Franco. This is CMQ Investing, and we will talk soon.